Welcome to episode 4 of Love, Love, Love.
Love, love, love.
Love, 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 love.
Love, love, love.
We are going to pick up where we left off from the last episode, and we are going to continue into Chase's journey. And we're going into a chapter. Maybe it's longer than a chapter.
Might be a book.
I'm going to go into the next book, which is really about his journey inward. You know, in the last episode, we really talked about this external desire and this false understanding that the grail is outside of yourself. It's not. And after his divorce, he really started taking a lot of steps to understand yourself more. Mm-hmm. And you explored this through personal development containers, a coaching program, psychedelic journeys, plant medicine journeys, music festivals. But it all started with a month-long road trip solo. Mm-hmm. Which that's, I want to get into that, but I'd love to first ask, did you ever tell Melissa that you had, in fact, stepped out of the marriage? Because I know in the last episode you mentioned she was feeling something. Mm-hmm. And obviously you were holding the guilt of that as well, but it seemed like the marriage ended and that never was revealed.
Yeah. It's kind of poetic because that actually didn't happen for a couple years. We signed our divorce papers in June of 2021, and the truth hadn't come out in that time. And I very much realized that this wasn't the reason we were getting divorced, but it still hung with me. And I think I made a promise to myself very early on that, like, okay, at this point, if I tell her that, it's going to hurt her more. So I kind of made this promise to myself that, I'm not going to bring that forward of my own will and volition to alleviate my own guilt, which feels like it would be a form of selfishness. But if she ever did ask me again, that I would tell the truth. And I would just await that time. And I kind of went on this journey of alleviating myself of that guilt without revealing that to her. And I think that's kind of how guilt works is actually.
It's definitely how forgiveness works.
Yeah, absolutely. So it did end up coming out. We would meet up regularly, not regularly, but every once in a while we would catch up over like a dinner or a drink or something like that and just stay updated with each other's lives. And, there was still love between us, but it was obviously transforming. And it was a couple years later that we met up over dinner, and she ended up asking me that question. Somehow Dominican Republic came back into our conversations, and then I felt that charge come over her of like, did you ever really do anything with her? And, I paused for a moment and I was just like, yeah, I did. I kissed her and we connected, and that crushed her as I expected it might, and I know also that I didn't bring it forward probably in the most gracious way because I had done so much work around alleviating my own guilt around it. I think I said something along the lines of like, I don't need your forgiveness or something like that. I want you to forgive me for you because I don't want you to be carrying resentment. But it came across in a really just kind of, I think, probably a not very loving way. Mm-hmm. And she had to leave dinner. Mm-hmm. She just got up, and I tried to kind of go after her and talk with her about it. But she was very adamant, like, I'm leaving. I have the freedom to leave. Let me go. Mm-hmm. And I did. And she just kind of made the choice for that period of time to just separate herself from me, cut me out of her life for a while. And yeah, it hurt. And I was like, okay, this is the payback for that action that I did. It's now coming back on me. And I definitely had to deal with that guilt of having hurt her. And, we didn't talk for quite some time, but ultimately we ended up finding peace and reconciliation. And just over this past year, she actually reached out and, named that she had moved through this process and found forgiveness and love and gratitude for our journey together. And things feel like they're back in harmony.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's so hard to not only have that conversation so many years after the fact, but it's also like, yeah, very, very hard to have already moved through the fact that it hurt her then, even if it wasn't explicitly said, and then to like, now I'm going to hurt you by saying the thing. And I'm hurting you because I used to lie about this thing to you. And it's just like, so it's like, feels like it's just like pain compounded. And it's a really courageous conversation for both of you guys to engage in. And I'm sure, although it was difficult, there was like liberation on the other side. And transparency always feels good, even if it's crunchy or uncomfortable to say the thing.
Yeah, I think there's something to this statement of like the truth will set you free, but it doesn't always feel good in the moment to bring the highest truth forward. And ultimately it does liberate everyone, when the truth comes out, but there may be a painful period that you have to navigate in finding that peace and that actual like sense of liberation inside of yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a heavy place to start. So you signed divorce papers and then you're taking a month off of work and you don't even really know where you're going. You're going on some adventure to just be in nature, connect with self is my understanding of this journey. And we have a lot of destinations we're going to stop at today as part of your inner journey. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions about this month-long journey. And my first question is, out of the places you visited during these 30 days, what was your favorite stop? And you were camping, right?
Yeah, I had bought a teardrop camper to pull behind my Explorer. And all I knew is I was going west because I was planning to see Joseph in California, my best friend. And he had just had his son. And he had asked me to be godfather. So I was going to meet him for the first time. And that's California. So from Oklahoma to California, it's a pretty good haul. So I plan to make some stops along the way. I think my favorite location, I had a few really beautiful spots. It would be between Flagstaff. That was the first time I had been to Flagstaff, Arizona. And there was something, and I still feel this to this day. Anytime I go into Arizona, there's like a lightness that comes through my entire body. And I feel like, oh, wow, I love this state. And I, of course, lived there for a little over a year before you and I came together. So I loved Flagstaff. I ended up extending my stay there for like 5 days and just exploring the wilderness and the mountains. And then I also really loved Tahoe. And up in Tahoe, I saw my first bear in real life. It was a little bear cub, and I had just set up a campsite, and the little bear popped its head up over this little ridge, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And then I was like, "Where's your mom?" And definitely caught my attention. But obviously, bears are a big part of my passion. I love bears, and they represent so many different elements of like fear and also like love and healing and power and strength. So yeah, those 2 spots were definitely my favorite. I
love that. What was the hardest moment of that trip?
What's really interesting is during this time, the feelings that I used to kind of separate between like, bliss and pain, joy and struggle, they kind of started to merge. So there would be times that were like so beautiful, but that were also painful. And, I told that story about like grace. And I think I just continued to experience different flavors of grace. It was like in the suffering, I would find joy. not because of the suffering, but like through the suffering, I would experience some kind of clarity about myself and about life that showed me like a new dynamic of like the way this great mystery works. So I think just there was a beauty in being out on the road alone. And I'd always had this passion to travel and to go out on the road. But I think how I had always envisioned it was that I would be doing that with my partner. And so there was a sadness to this idea of like being alone out on the road, but also like a freedom and a beauty in it. And it was like, oh, my beloved is no person outside of me. It's actually God. And this whole journey really started taking me to this place of finding God within myself. Very, very early on in the days before we got divorced, my exploration of God started really shifting. And actually, Melissa turned me onto a podcast called Reclaiming Christianity that really started opening my horizons beyond what I had learned growing up in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell has this quote that I love. Bliss is any feeling fully felt. And I feel like when you're so present with your experience and you're holding both the heartbreak and experiencing God's love through the sunset or the sunrise or the trees, it's bliss. And I love that you were like feeling the merge of all of that.
Yeah.
What was the biggest epiphany or breakthrough you experienced on this trip?
It's really interesting. I think I really started tasting a new level of freedom that existed beyond my comprehension. It wasn't just about being out on the open road by myself. There was something that I was starting to discover that was like an internal freedom. And it's actually not being bound and confined by your idea of what love is. It's like allowing for the open hands of how God works in your life and allowing for the mystery to guide you. I think I really just started realizing how presence is this connection point with God. And, our presence is always found through our breath and through our heart. And I had not even discovered breath work at this point, but I was in a coach training program that I'd signed up for in February of that year. And just as a pursuit of my own healing. And, we started, that was the first time I encountered meditation practices. And I remember feeling the first time I really dropped into a deep meditative state. I was reading Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I was in so much pain during that season. But then I would go into this inner plane and there would be this stillness and I could rest in that stillness. And it was like all the pain and everything would just kind of melt away for a period of time. And I would come out of those meditative states feeling lighter and like remembering a little bit more of who I am beyond all of the life circumstances. And so I started discovering this greater truth about the freedom that's available to us in the midst of all of our sufferings. And I always think of that Viktor Frankl quote of like, you can take everything from a man except for one thing, like the last of his freedoms. And that's the ability to choose, to choose in any given set of circumstances. I definitely butchered that quote a little bit, but it's like our freedom to choose our outlook on life creates our reality. And so I started just finding the gratitude for the life path that I've been given. And it led me to this beautiful road trip and to go in to connect with my godson. And yeah, I'm still in pain, but there is beauty in the path ahead, and I get to kind of create that from this internally liberated state.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so you went on this road trip. I imagine it was really hard to go back to work after that.
Yeah, a month went by really fast. I had envisioned to actually get into Wyoming and Montana and go see Yellowstone, and I really just love the mountains. Obviously, the two places I picked are like in the mountains. But yeah, I had to get back, and my work called me back into West Texas, and so I would say that following this, like entering into the coaching program and starting to travel and starting to feel this deeper connection within myself, the things that I used to do and be okay with started to feel like less and less real. I started, as I went deeper into the coaching program, I felt this like gap forming between the career that I used to be okay with doing for the sake of providing financial security for my marriage. And that just didn't seem to matter that much anymore to me, and I started to feel a deeper call inside of myself to bring something else forward into the world.
Yeah, it's powerful. And so then you went to Dave Asprey's event that he puts on, right?
Yeah, it was, the coach program that I was in was one of Dave Asprey's creations.
Yeah.
With another guy. And that led me to 40 years of Zen, which was a neurofeedback training. And my friend actually had gone to a biohacking conference and got a discount for it and said he couldn't go. He's going to give it to me. And I had to sit with it because it was a big price point. But I had that feeling inside of myself, like this is going to continue you along the path that you're meant to go. There's something that sparked up in me when I learned about what it was like. They do an interview call with you and kind of give you a rundown on what you'll be doing. And it's just like 5 days of deep meditation. You're meditating like 4 to 6 hours a day. And you're in these pods giving you feedback on when you're in a meditative state. And so I said yes to that. And it was in February of 2022. And I had some time between when I said yes to prepare for it. And that was also the first place I experienced breath work. It was up in Seattle, this beautiful location. And they started with breath work every day. It was the first time I experienced it. I didn't know what the heck was happening, but my body was having a visceral reaction and so much tension that I was holding, just like hands going into tetany and tingling. But I would leave the breath work feeling so much more clear and light. And they feed you really good food to nourish the brain, and you're not drinking caffeine, so you can go into the meditative states, and you're working with facilitators to give you protocols for healing and healing internally. So you're doing a lot of forgiveness. And the majority of my meditations were around forgiveness. And there's beautiful protocol for resetting your neural pathways around painful events in your life. So ultimately, I ended up doing a lot of work around my marriage and my divorce. And finding forgiveness for even smaller things in my life. I traced back to small events and things that had impacted me, though. Started small and kind of ended with a lot of the stuff around divorce. And the final meditation was actually a manifestation. And so you're doing all this rewiring of the brain. And then you're also like doing CAP training, which is building new neural pathways in your brain. So not only are you healing the old, but you're creating new pathways. And the manifestation was one of the most profound experiences of my life. I've never felt that kind of bliss sitting in meditation before, but I was weeping tears of joy, and I was envisioning what has driven me ever since. I was envisioning this massive healing center that I had opened with my love of my life, and my whole family and all my friends were there, and we were gathering on this fire for an opening ceremony, and we were dancing around the fire, and I was weeping throughout this thing as if it was already happening. And I remember feeling like there was no doubt in my mind that this was meant to be. And the protocol for it was to like envision something big and then to keep going. So like what I ended up seeing was this thing wasn't just a single facility that I had launched. It was actually like at the end of it, it kind of zoomed out and I saw these lights all around the globe. And it was like this web of interconnected lights. Mm-hmm. And it was like these centers were everywhere. And people were coming there for healing and to remember themselves. And I was just beginning to remember myself. So it was really wild to experience this. And it felt like I just tapped into a frequency that it was brought into me rather than like emerging from within me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the facilitator actually named afterwards that, for these manifestations, for something so powerful like that synchronicities would start showing up in your life. And they would feel like an edge, and there might be fear and excitement. And if you say yes to those opportunities, your life will start to move down this track. Mm-hmm. And you'll start to create that life for yourself. And that's exactly what started happening.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's such a beautiful story. So then again, I think it's so interesting. I just want to pause for a second. Like when you have these transformational experiences where you're either getting super vulnerable or you're doing deep healing work or you're having elevated levels of love, you're communing with God on a deeper level than you're used to go back home after that, if you have not yet created a life that you're obsessed with, it's really hard. Mm-hmm. How is it going home from that?
I feel like I had such a rhythm of leaving and coming back to Oklahoma, leaving and coming back, whether it was, out on these kinds of things and these like adventures and these retreats or just down to West Texas to work. But I was always doing this inner work. And it felt like every time I came back home, I was seeing things differently. Mm-hmm. I was a different person. And then I was kind of coming into this very familiar environment and feeling that tension of the old and the new. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't really explain what I was going through, what I was doing. I tried at times, but I ended up, down the road, just figuring out like, dude, you're not meant to like explain this through words. Like you're actually just meant to embody it. Mm-hmm. And, you start discovering all these ways to feel more free inside of yourself. And you want to bring this kind of stuff to the people you love the most, but people are on their own track and you can't force their path. So, I definitely experienced this energy of like this savior mentality start to come through me of just wanting to help others to know and discover the things that I was discovering. Mm-hmm. But over time, I learned that lesson of just like, be it, give love, and accept people where they are exactly on their path, and also simultaneously hold the vision for their highest potential. Mm-hmm. But you're not meant to force that along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's so powerful. And I imagine many of you have had these experiences where you're just like in the universal flow and you're noticing signs and you're seeing symbols and the conversation you had with your friend yesterday, you're seeing a billboard that had the quote that you said, and like you just know you're on the right path and you're seeing all these synchronicities. That is such a fun place to exist. And I believe that is the place we are meant to be operating from. And it feels like you started to get a taste of that. And you can call that, we can use Carl Jung's term, synchronicity. You can call it like, spirits talking to you. It can be a conversation with God. It can call it what you want. It's magical. And it's so, so fun. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you had a very synchronous or divinely orchestrated experience that led you to your next personal development endeavor, your birthday weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like touching on what you touched on there, the way that synchronicities, like this is something I've come to believe about synchronicity is it is actually alignment with the way this universe is orchestrated. The massive like formula that makes up like the cause and effect of how everything interacts. We start to work in alignment with that, and we start to connect with like this inner guidance system, and to start to notice. And it is again through more presence. You're noticing the things that are around you, and perhaps they've always been around you, but we didn't have the eyes to see or the ears to hear. And so just like starting to notice the little signs that come in that light you up, and a lot of times those come along with some kind of element of fear. And the way I kind of see it is the excitement is like the soul is calling you toward this. And when the fear is there present with it, it's the ego resistance. So you're kind of actually in this, you're a little bit of a world divided. You feel
Face
the fear.
off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's these like two elements of yourself, like kind of contending for control. And the soul's like, dude, take this step.
Let the soul win.
Yes. Like, let me be free. And the ego's like, no, I like things how they are. I want to continue with what's known, with what's comfortable. And I think the theme throughout this journey of just pushing the edges of comfort, like continued to be a thing. And
It's part of telling this story.
absolutely. I mean, it's taken a lot of pushing the edges to get to this place to tell this story. And yeah, that arose for me. That next step came through on my birthday later that year after the neurofeedback training. And I was trying to figure out I wanted to do something significant and beautiful. I didn't want a whole lot of people to celebrate me. I actually felt more called towards solitude for my birthday. And I had been doing a lot of inner work in the solitude of my own room and of my own inner chamber. And I was trying to make something work, but nothing was landing, and had some invites from different friends to come across and hang out with them. But I knew that was just like, that's the old me. Like, I don't want to do that. And I still love my friends, but like, I know what track that goes down. And so after, a month or so of trying to figure something out, I was just on the road between Houston and West Texas, and just like, okay, I'm done trying to plan this. Nothing's landing. Okay, God, like, show me where I'm supposed to go. I want to go where like my soul is going to thrive the most. And as I surrendered, it was probably within a few minutes, I opened up Instagram, and the first thing on Instagram, I had been following Aubrey Marcus's podcast. And so he was in my field, and there was a post about Full Temple Reset, which is a 5-day retreat through Fit for Service. And it was over the dates that I was trying to plan something for my birthday, and it fell right on my birthday. And I was just like, oh, I had that spark, that fire ignite in me. It was an indescribable sensation of excitement. And I was called into community, and I knew that I had to say yes to that. It was something like, this is for me. And I also felt the fear mechanism, because I had been doing all this work alone, and this was going to be bringing me into a container of people where like others are on this path doing the work. And I didn't even know really that's what it was, but something lit up in me. And so I said yes to that, and went on that 5-day immersion over my birthday.
And that kind of led you on a little bit of a Fit for Service journey. So you went to Full Temple Reset, and I'm sure you learned a lot and met cool people. and then they were putting on a music festival that you then said yes to.
Yeah. In that Full Temple Reset, we were doing dream interpretation, and the dreams were vivid because we were fasting. So it's like a 5-day, like mimicking fast. And we started tracking our dreams as part of the process. And one of the facilitators was actually helping us interpret dreams. And
Eric Godsey.
yeah,
He's amazing.
yeah, incredible. And he really like helped me orient toward a truth that was coming through my dreams, is like, there's this imbalance within you, and this part of you from being raised primarily by your mom, this masculine side of you is actually like really wounded. And there's this expression that wants to come through you, but it has to be balanced within you. You have to find that balance of the masculine and feminine. And, I started contemplating that. And then one of the guys, while we were sitting in the sauna, there were cold plunge and sauna every day. And he started talking about the music festival that they were putting on. And it was planned actually to be up in Wyoming. And I, as soon as he said Wyoming, I had that spark in me again. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is why I didn't go to Wyoming. I want to go to Wyoming so badly. And here it is. There's this opportunity. And I had to sit with that. I was actually scared of it because it was a music festival. I'd never been to one of those. And it's ecstatic dance, just like very free flow dance that I had never tasted. I was terrified of dancing. And again, I sat with it. And the next day I said yes to that. And I bought my ticket to it. And it ended up changing to be in Vegas because the place in Wyoming didn't work out. And but by that time I had already like committed to it so deeply, and like this is another transformational step along my journey. I was just like, I'm going regardless.
How was it to dance?
Dude, I set myself free in that experience. I was terrified going into that. And I remember like the week leading up to it, I was at my parents' house in Oklahoma and nobody was there. I was like actually watching the house, and I was feeling all these nerves around it. And I was like, okay, I have this playlist of like artists that are going to be there. I'm just going to put on some music and I'm going to like experiment with just dancing in the privacy of like a home with nobody else in it. And the amount of judgment that I felt when I started doing that was wild. And it revealed to me, like, oh, you've been afraid of others judging you for how you dance, but it's actually just you judging you.
Others.
Yeah. And so I leaned into it, and I was just like, okay, like I was noticing the judgment while I was doing it. I was like, okay, and I kind of laughed at myself because I was like, it's just me judging me. And I surrendered more into the process, and I actually connected with the archetype of like King David. And it said that like, he wrote like all this, like a vast majority of the Psalms in the Bible. And there's so many Psalms where he talks about singing and dancing for God and worshiping through dance. And I was working with a coach at the time, and I was talking with her about this festival I was going to. And she had used that same sentence of like, what if you made dance worship? What if you found this pathway to connect with God through dance? And that opened something up in me. And just that night, I felt a sense of liberation. But still, the festival loomed, and I went. And the first night, I was like, I'm going all in. I want to be as free as possible. And so all I wore to the first night was a kilt and sandals, like nothing under the kilt. And I just like painted like the top of my body and just allowed myself to be free. And yeah, wearing sandals in public was an edge for me too, because my hands and feet sweat intensely. And that was something that I'd always tried to hide away. And I knew that like, if I'm doing this out in public, like my feet could sweat so much that I'm like creating puddles on the floor, which did happen. I have a whole experience around that. But I found a liberation through allowing myself to dance and move freely. And throughout that festival event, I found so much more comfort in doing it. It was still an edge, but I pushed through it every time. And it was just like this process of witnessing my mind, judging and being concerned about others around me. And then like connecting with my breath, just moving into my body and liberating myself.
Yeah. Dance is so powerful, and so is costuming. And it's just, you get to meet so many parts of yourself through that expression. I think festivals or ecstatic dance rituals are powerful initiations, powerful journeys that you can go on. And it's just so beautiful to meet new parts of yourself. And like, who am I in this costume? How does she express? And like, what is a part of me that maybe like I haven't gotten to express because I'm working and momming and doing these other things? Like maybe there's a part of you that's like dying to come online, and through costume and through movement, it gets to have a seat at the table. And I think it's a really fun and beautiful and creative and expansive way to explore yourself. And I think it's so beautiful that you leaned into that. And I know since then you've been to music festivals, and dancing is no longer an edge. It's like you freed yourself from that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting as a man. And so much of the programming that we come through is just like, you're not supposed to show your emotions. You're not supposed to dance freely. Like that's things that women do. Men can't do that. That's the programming. It's not truth. But breaking out of those structures and those limited ways of being was part of this liberation process.
And I think that you saying that, that's what women do. I would just say that a lot of the programming for women is you dance for the man. And so then it's for the male gaze. And you're like, is this sexy? Does my body look good in this move? Like, is this, it's all about like attraction and like being what you think the man wants.
Yeah.
And I think for women, ecstatic dance is very liberating and free too, because it's a journey with you and like your sexuality, your expression. It's your own, and no one moves their hips the way you do, and no one connects with the beat and the rhythm of the music the way you do. And like, do you like the way your body feels in that movement? And like that, it just becomes this like beautiful inner journey. Again, dance has codes.
Yes, it does. I mean, it liberates a vital, like the life force energy within us.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So at Arcadia, you're still in the synchronicity portal, and you're just following the breadcrumbs of life and saying yes. It reminds me of Michael Singer's book, Surrender Experiment. You're just like saying yes to things. But another offering or suggestion came your way, which you said yes to.
Yeah. I was staying in a house with a group of people, and one guy I had met at the Full Temple Reset event, and he was actually putting on an event later that year in Texas, and it was just going to be a gathering of souls in like a house, and there was actually going to be a plant medicine ceremony, and I had never really engaged with plant medicines in a ceremonial container. I had played around with some things, in college and stuff, but it was always just kind of for fun. And he brought that to my awareness, and again, felt that little thing ignite in me of like, oh, that sounds like very alluring. I'm gonna say yes to that. And I committed. I was, I think, the first person that signed up for it. He was just planning it and hadn't even launched it yet, but he told me about it, and he was like, dude, if you want to put your deposit down, that'll help me get things moving. And I was like, all right, I'm in, So I said yes to that, and that led me to the next component of the journey. In between that, I did go to another Fit for Service event in October, and in that time frame, I actually had this like deep knowing that I was meant to step away from the oil and gas industry. And so I was working with my dad in the oil and gas industry. And I think the vision was for me to take over the company, and I was feeling so clearly inside of myself. I was like, this is not what I want to be doing with the rest of my life. And I have something else that I'm meant to do, but I don't even know really fully what it is yet. So it was like a leap of faith. And I had already notified him of that earlier in the year, that I was moving that direction. But this was like the final decision point of like, I want to come off the payroll and set myself free to like fully go all in on this path. And so I made that choice.
How was that received?
I think it was tough. I mean, when I told him earlier in the year, I think that was when the ball kind of dropped initially. And then when I made the decision to come off payroll, my dad's always been that guy who understands and appreciates integrity and truth. And he always supported me doing what I wanted to be doing. Even though we loved working together. I really enjoyed working with my dad, even though it wasn't like my passion. It was nice to be working with him in that regard. And I can see now in hindsight that like, a part of me was doing that to earn love.
And to connect with him.
And to connect, yeah. And there's so much beauty in that too. Like the connection that we built over that time, I wouldn't take it back. But the time had come for me to actually take, like, I was like crossing this threshold, and I still had a foot in the old room, you know? And so it was like, I need to close that door. And so I did. And then life started to change even more rapidly.
Yeah.
So I went to this event in November, Lapicero is what it was called, and sat with San Pedro, the cactus medicine, and it was a beautiful experience. The facilitators had been training in Peru, and they with Don Howard, and they had just like such an incredible container set up, and I went all into that experience. Actually, the first day I showed up there, met who would become my partner, and you know, we connected deeply throughout those 5 days, and then like the relationship just kind of took off, and I felt like, okay, this is the person I've been seeking. She's on the path. I'm going to go all in here, and I had actually had plans to go to Hawaii right after that event, and ended up delaying it a little bit so I could go hang out with her and meet her family in Houston. And you know, it turns out that like she also worked with plant medicines and served, and that kind of really became a theme of the following year, 2023. I started going deep into the plant medicine path and working with these plant teachers in a ceremonial setting as a continuation of my journey, which was every time you're sitting with a plant medicine, it's pushing an edge, it feels like.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, the ceremony in Texas, the San Pedro ceremony was beautiful, but I didn't really like connect deeply with the medicine on that journey. I felt like I was looking for it to kick off, and it never really fully did for me. But that's a very, very subtle medicine, and you have to be very deeply present. And if you're like seeking for something, it might not even show up. So I didn't learn that until later on. But yeah, the path moved forward, and I did end up going to Hawaii and connecting with a friend there. And then that Hawaii is like a whole teacher in itself for me along this path. I returned to Hawaii many times along this path, and many things emerged out of that. But yeah, I felt like I entered into this union with her, and then like this whole new door opened into like, okay, learning about myself through plant teachers. And simultaneously, I said yes to a full year of Fit for Service. I had one of the Fit for Service guys reached out to me. I had shown up at 3 events the past year. So the Full Temple Reset, Arcadia, and the Sedona event in October. And so like through my continued showing up, they were offering stewardship for a year-long container the following year. And it was, you know, a nice price point that they're just like, hey, all you got to do, like, we're going to pay for you to come, show up, be present, meet people who are coming in, and just be who you normally are, and just continue the work. And so that was like too good to say no to. And I'd already loved my experiences in that container. So I said yes to that. So this 2023 was this massive journey with plant medicines and Fit for Service, community, engaging and pushing edges through community without any kind of entheogens. And then, you know, sitting in ceremony, in ceremonial containers, and doing deep, deep inner work through plant medicines. And life just really started transforming. Yeah.
Fit for Service in 2023, it was a year-long container that included weekly coaching calls. And there was probably like 200 people in this container. I was in this container. I paid to be a part of the container. It was not on scholarship. And it was very powerful. it was just a very powerful year. And I think the people who said yes to this journey, there's like some gold thread that's woven between all of us, and everybody had obviously gone through something or experienced something, and was at this place in their life where like they said they gave this bold yes to be a part of this container. And so it's really cool to kind of hear everyone's story about what led them to say yes to that year-long container. But there was weekly calls, and there were 3 summits that were scheduled. And so we went to the March summit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where you and I met. It was a very interesting meeting because it was actually the first activity, and it was an eye gazing activity. And
you're like walking. So there's 200 people, and you're just like walking. There's music playing. You're kind of walking aimlessly, just like looking at people and taking them in as you're walking. And then when the music stops, whoever you're in front of, you just eye gaze.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember being very nervous going into that.
Oh, yeah. I had never eye gazed before. I was terrified. And your eyes are piercing. And
I really like eye contact.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel fearful of eye contact, but I had never formally eye gazed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an experience. And I remember meeting you, and but like we didn't even exchange words. It was just like a meeting through the eyes. Mm-hmm. And then we didn't even talk during that first event. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until Montana, the second event, where we actually like connected a little bit.
Yeah. These summits are powerful. I want to get back to your story, but it's like every summit has its own flavor of initiation. And I know after that first summit, I dropped my therapy license. Like you're understanding things in like a new and different way. And they're very powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful containers.
Yeah. That summit pushed my edges in some ways. Each summit did. But that first one, I remember the biggest moment for me was there was a poetry workshop that Caitlin led. And she had us all start just like, she gave us like 15 minutes. And of course she like led into it. She's a poet. And she gave us a prompt, I am. And then she gave us 15 minutes, like go find somewhere on the land and just drop in and write what comes through you. And I wrote a poem. And I remember going to this tree and like asking it permission to sit under it. And I was like, I've never done that. But like, I felt like I needed to. And I sat down under the tree, and then just this like poetry just started flowing through me. And I just started writing, and I didn't stop writing the whole time. It was like a pure stream of consciousness. And it's a long poem. And when I finished it, like I remember her saying like, okay, we're wrapping up. And I was like still in it and completed it. And just felt like, I don't know what just came through me, but I feel like it's good. And I want to share it. But then my ego came in, and it was just like terrified of getting up in front of people and reading this poem. And I remember like trying to kind of like halfway raise my hand, but then I was like avoiding. And then I moved to the side where like, you know, my higher self was like, you'll be more visible over there. But then my ego was like, no, just get over to the side where nobody will see you. And she kept giving opportunities for people to come up and read their poems. And I just kept like saying no. And I felt like shame in my body afterwards. There was something inside of me, like my soul was like, you needed to share that.
Our cells listen. Like every time we abandon ourselves, that like whisper, or in that case, that like loud, like, I want to do that. And we don't. Like we are telling our body we're either like not worthy of that. We're letting like fear win, the ego wins, our comfort zone wins. And I think it's like so epic every time we can break through whatever those barriers are, which obviously you're doing and telling your story. And obviously you did at Fit for Service.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that it's like the choice between fear and love. That's kind of what it always comes down to, is like, are you going to align with fear of being seen, or are you going to align with like this fire that's inside of you that may not even be definable, but there's a prompting inside of you to go share this. And, you know, sometimes we can want to share it to be seen, you know, and to like make ourselves feel good in some way. And that can also be a subtle form of fear. But for me, it was the overwhelming fear to like actually get up in front of people and share my art, share a part of my soul, because it's a vulnerable poem. But I went back to the house I was staying in that night, and I was staying with a few people, and I read the poem to them, and they were like, you have to read this. Like, how can you read this? And I was like, I guess they do a talent show at the end of each one of these events, right? And you kind of have to apply for it. And I was like, I guess I could reach out and see if he'll get me on the talent show to read it. And they were like, you got to do that. And so I did. And he responded like, he's like, I would love to get you in there, but we're full. It's not going to happen, you know, sorry, you know, maybe come back next time. And dude, he pulled a fast one on me, because like we're sitting in there in the talent show the next day, and a bunch of people are going, and then he gets up on the mic and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to call up the next person who doesn't actually know they're coming up here, but now I can see that they're starting to squirm a bit. So he's actually got an idea that he's coming up. And he called me up there spontaneously to read my poem. And I got to go up there in front of the crowd and share it. And all the nerves were there, all the fear, but it was just that moment to like lean into that edge. And got to share the poem, and it liberated me in some way, you know. And yeah.
Are you going to read it?
I am going to read it. Yeah. I'll share it. So it's called I Am. I am free, but am I really? The ebbs and flows of confidence echoes, light and shadows of the self. What self? The one you've always known? No, something else glows. Somewhere deep inside where truth strives to hide or break out into the wild, the wounded inner child who'd rather not be seen for fear of death. Or is it life? The struggles and the strife, too vulnerable to share the burdens that you bear, might drive them all away. Just hold off one more day. Stay. What you've known is safe. It doesn't pay to be brave. Remain in the dark in the closet of your heart. Keep it locked away. Yet something whispers, venture forth. Lean into the fear and a new you may appear. A version yet unseen, unknown. The child within has grown into a man, yet still scarred, brutal, bloodied, marred. Would anyone dare look at this mangled mess? Or might the scars bear witness to his strength? The trials he's endured, a vital part to the work of art this life has made. Yes, dig deep. The shame and judgment are not yours to keep. To be free, what kind of life would that be? All those you've sought to please, stand, rise up from your knees, leave this lonely room behind. The incessant loops within your mind, they are not truth. Who knows the truth better than your soul? Listen closely. Can you hear? The Great Spirit draws you near, so don't recoil from fear. It is your guide. There's nowhere you can hide from this divine love that rests within. You are not depraved by sin. You are the masterpiece. So shine your light, spread your voice, but remember, you always have the choice to remain exactly where you are or become the shooting star.
I love that.
as I was reading that, I was just like connecting with how I felt on that stage reading it. And you even posted a little clip of it recently, and I could hear the fear in my voice. And I remember just like kind of being in like tunnel vision as well. But afterwards, coming down, and like so many people came up to me and thanked me for sharing the poem. And I realized something in that moment. I was like, I didn't do this for praise or for like thanks. I actually was terrified to do it, but it touched people. And it also built bridges of connection through authentic expression. And I think that that's what happens when we share ourselves vulnerably and we bring forward, especially our own art, into the world and allow that piece of our heart to be seen. There's a connection that forms, and people get to see like, oh, I'm not so different. That person's struggling, and I resonate with those struggles as well. And that poem just speaks so much to this path of like coming out of this like dark room that like I had kept myself in for so long, and bringing the voice into the world, and just looking for that spark of divine light within.
Yeah. And then what?
I was living in Texas with my partner at the time, and had a couple of months there, just working with her, serving with her, and also journeying. And then the next summit came forward, and that was in Montana.
Yeah, that was in May. That's when I remember meeting you. I think I was too nervous at the first summit with eye gazing, and you eye gaze with so many people. I didn't like actually remember that we eye gazed, you know? Obviously you told me after the fact. But I remember being behind you to get food one day, and then we like started conversation. I think we actually were talking about how good the food looked, which if anybody knows Chase, that is like a great topic, to chat about. He'll talk about food forever. Yep. And then we ended up sitting on the grass, and I remember talking to you, and our friend Gianni came and sat with us. And I remember you talking about your excitement about serving with your partner, and there was something you guys were building in Brazil. I remember you sharing that you served your mom plant medicine, that she did a mushroom journey. And I remember that standing out to me and being so amazing. And then I think you guys served your grandparents. Yeah. And I just remember being in awe of these stories and thinking that was so cool.
Yeah, it was a big gift to be able to serve family members, some of the people that you love, and just like hold space for them and their emotional releases. And, you know, my mom had like a profound experience, and it kind of activated something in her that put her on the path of doing what she does now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And so then from May, that was when the second summit was. We didn't have another summit planned until October in Sedona. And I think they ended up squeezing another one in July that we did. But where were you off to after Montana?
So Montana was actually, again, right over my birthday. So I had driven out and was camping in my van. Now I had exchanged the camper for a van, and we did a road trip back to Texas after that. And then a few days later, we were flying to Brazil and planning to be there for most of the summer. So we ended up being there for 2 months, working on that land and kind of creating the space for structures to be built for a center there. The deep work continued while I was there, and navigated some relationship tensions, and ended up coming back at the end of July.
Did building the center there, laying the structure, did that feel like it was your dream, or did that feel like it was her dream? Were you excited by that? What was your energy around that?
It's really interesting because in the moment, I think I was trying to convince myself that this was like in alignment with the vision that I had in 40 years.
In your manifestation. Yeah.
But there was something that felt off for me in Brazil. the town for me didn't feel like warm. There was beauty there. There was so much beauty, but there was a part of me that felt this tension of like, is this where I want to be? Is this, and I didn't know it at the time, but like that tension was very subtle. And yeah, it ended up just kind of really, obviously just kind of falling apart. But I was grateful for the experience to be there and really connected with that land deeply, and did journey with ayahuasca for the first time when I was there. Actually, that was the second time I journeyed with Aya. Had a very deep experience there, which we'll tell another story, but ended up, navigating some tensions, actually coming back earlier than we planned, at the end of July. And because in that time frame that we were there, Fit for Service actually proposed another event that wasn't actually originally on the
July
schedule.
one.
Yeah. So I was, it all kind of worked out that like, okay, let's go back and I'll be able to go attend that event. And so we came back, I think, a few days before that event kicked off.
Yeah, that event was very physical. It was called an initiation, and they opened it up for new people to come into our container. So, we had all been journeying together in this closed container for 5 or 6 months. And then they opened it up for people that wanted to join us for the back half. And it was like a 48-hour whirlwind. It's like you came in, there was an opening talk. There was some like self-defense classes, kendo battles, ecstatic dance, a shamanic breathwork journey, and a temescal, a sweat lodge. And it was like all of that happened in 48 hours. I remember being sore. I remember being like very tired, but like my heart was bursting. And it was just like, it was like you were telling your cells that you can do hard things and do hard things with others and community. And I think there's codes to that. The bonds you build, and any athletes who are watching this, I know it's like the bonds that are built when you do hard things together are just so powerful.
Absolutely. That was my first time doing a temescal.
Me too.
Also one of my favorite experiences of my life.
Me too.
And I felt like I got sick coming back from Brazil, like very sick. And it felt like I had just recovered just in time to go to that event, but I was still like working some stuff out of my body. And it just felt like this purification. And I remember feeling so exhausted after that, but also like enlivened. I mean, breath and temescal alone are experiences. And then all the stuff we did around it. It was an intense 48 hours.
I remember saying hi to you at the initiation. You were standing by yourself. And I remember feeling like you kind of like weren't there.
Yeah. I don't really remember that. So that's probably very accurate.
But it felt like you were like, I don't know, going through something or something. I know how I felt in your presence in Montana, and you were very lit up and telling these stories and very excited. And I remember how I felt saying hi to you in July, and it was like a very different energy. Yeah. I had done a lot in that little gap of time. Yeah. And if you had just come back from a trip and cut it short and just there was tension and all of that, that's a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So after initiation, you go back home.
Well, I went back to Houston, and like with my partner, and we were planning on going back to Oklahoma shortly thereafter, because I had been away for a good stretch of months, and wanted to go see my nephew and my niece. And I was, just excited to reconnect with family. But we decided to actually do a medicine ceremony before I went back to Oklahoma to kind of, the intention was to integrate everything and maybe get some clarity on what we were doing in Brazil and what the path forward was. And I remember my own personal intentions that night. I was really just seeking God so deeply within myself, but there was this subtle element that was still looking for it outside of me, even though I was like, you're journeying with plant medicines, and like, that is an inward process, but there was something I was still contending with of like, using substances to connect me with God. And I was still in this like internal conflict that I wasn't even aware of. But I was wanting it to bring me into some kind of experience with God that I have not tasted. And I remember writing my intentions in my journal that like, I want to experience divine love and divine choice, and to clear away all of the blocks that are disconnecting me from that love. And I wrote out all the blocks that I could think of. And I remember just like burning it in the fire, and it felt very big, what I was asking for. I think my soul knew, like, this is not a small ask. And there was a part of me that was just like, after that initiation event, having been through that stuff, I was just ready to surrender. And so we actually did a stack of MDMA and mushroom that night. And I had never done that before. And I had been told by a friend that like, this is the way to do it. You know, this is like, he never journeys without that stack, because the MDMA opens the heart and it creates this love frequency. And then you drop in with the mushrooms, and I remember him actually kind of phrasing it like, you don't have bad trips doing this. You know, you don't have dark experiences. And so I kind of went into it in this naive, like egoic energy of like, this is going to protect me from any kind of like heaviness or darkness, and I will just experience this blissful love state. But what's interesting is when you set intentions to clear away all the things that are blocking you from connection with love, they don't just magically lift up out of you. At least not in my experience. You kind of have to meet those parts of yourself. I will speak from my experience. It took me into the darkness in order to illuminate the spots of darkness within me, the fears that I was holding on to, so that I could access greater love and start to actually experience a deeper level of love. But I think if I had known what experience was ahead of me that night, I don't think I would have had the courage to go into it, because it was the hardest experience, one of the hardest experiences of my life. And
plant medicine requires a level of surrender. And I think so many people who say no to journeying with plant medicine is because the fear is so loud regarding that, of not wanting to have a quote unquote bad trip. There really are no bad trips. You know, it's like, I understand it can feel bad, but it's showing you something within yourself. I think there's plant medicine just requires such a deep level of surrender. And part of the medicine and the magic is the fact when you say yes, you do not know what it's going to show you. And what you said is I think that's so profound. It's like, if you knew what it was going to show you, you might not say yes. If someone tried, a medicine man or woman was like, this is what you're going to see, this is what you'd be like, I'm good, but there's this like surrender into the plant, and you trust that you're going to see exactly what you need to see. And it is every time you say yes to walking the medicine path, not only does it require such a deep level of intention, your yes is so courageous. There is like Chase was referring to, there is a clearing, a purification to the unconscious realms of your psyche and these parts of you that maybe you've picked up on in the conscious mind, but you're not going to see the way the plant can show you. And there's such a wild intelligence to it.
Absolutely. And I think it's also vital to name that the container for the journey is so important, set and setting. So like, what's your mindset and what's the setting you're taking it in? And we didn't have a facilitator, with us. We had been facilitating and definitely had a reverence for the medicine. But we we didn't have anybody who was like maintaining a level of like sobriety to support. And I think that's something to be named. Is when you can journey that way, but there's a risk involved. And I think the integration process is also vital, right? So we entered into ceremony. It was a full moon night, August 1st, and I had never really done night ceremonies. I've been doing daytime ceremonies, and I think there was a fear in me of journeying at nighttime. Like something in me, I had always identified as somebody who's like aligned with love and light. And I had been venturing into my own darkness, some of my own volition, some were brought upon me unexpectedly, right? But there was still this mindset of like, I am a being of light. And we were entering into it in darkness. And I think there was like a little bit of a fear in me around that, but I was also with people that I knew. I was journeying with my girlfriend at the time and two of her brothers and one of her brother's partners. So there were 5 of us. And we built a fire. We set intentions. We set up the music. We set up a fruit tray. We made sure everything was set up nicely. And went in. And so I took the MDMA first, let it start kicking in, and then did the mushrooms. And it was a bigger dose than I probably needed to do, but obviously it was exactly what it needed to be. So went in, and the vibe was feeling good initially, and we had a good playlist going, and we're all sitting around the fire. The moon's rising in the sky, and in one of my previous journeys, I had started having some stuff coming through my hands, like energy, and they would be twitching, and they would I could surrender into it, and they would twitch, and my hands would move, and it would go with like the beat of music without me actually making it happen. It was really interesting, and it seemed to come online when I was sitting with mushrooms, and it started happening again in this journey. And I had never showed it to anybody, but I had talked about it a little bit, and I was like, oh, this is happening really loud. So I was like, look what's happening. And so I laid down and I let it happen, and it started happening like really powerfully. And they were all just watching, and I sat up and I was like, I don't know what that is, And they were like, how does it come through you? And I was like, honestly, I just put my hand up here like this, and it starts happening. And they all did that. And that energy started moving through the entire circle, and all of us started having this thing happening. And it was really strange. I thought it was something that was isolated to me, and then it was like an energy that moved through the group. And I think when that happened, I felt a level of like fear start to come in. Like there was a curiosity, but there was also like, okay, this seems strange. And I remember one of her brothers saying, like, I think this is like some kind of Kundalini activation, and didn't really know what it was. And then his wife, who was journeying with us, asked, hey, why is my heart beating fast? And I remember my partner turning to me and looking at me, and she was like, I don't know, why is her heart beating fast? And she looked at me like I should know. And I had this fear enter into me, like it was like a wave, like a surge, like an eruption. And my heart immediately started racing. And I feel like it synced up with hers. And the fear that gripped me in that moment was this fear that I had introduced something that I had never tried. I didn't know how other people were going to react. And I put somebody else's life in danger. And when that fear hit me, the world flipped upside down. Like, not literally, but it was like, it was nighttime already, but like, it was just like this veil that goes whoosh, and just fell over. And the fear that was in me and that heart racing, like it didn't stop. And I remember right after that, they're like, oh, it's just the medicine. And she's like, oh yeah, it's just the medicine. And she just kind of started chilling, but the fear was in me. So it was like something moved into her and then moved into me. And I was, from that point forward, in a version of like a hellscape, and I couldn't break out of it. And I remember feeling this fear and like trying to breathe into it. And I wasn't voicing it to anyone. And they were all kind of just like talking a little bit. And I decided, I was like, I'm going to go inside and use the bathroom. So I went inside, and when I went into the bathroom, you're not typically meant to look in the mirrors when you're on plant medicines, but it wasn't like a wild experience for me. But I felt this like fear in my system. And I went out and I checked my phone, which we had left inside, which we had also set intentions not to connect with our phones during the experience. And I did. And I had received a message from a friend, and it was just an interesting message. He was like, "Hey man, haven't heard from you in a long time. Like, where are you?" And there was this fear that came in through that message of like, oh, I've fallen into some other dimension, and my friends don't know where I've gone. And it's like, I've fallen off the face of the earth. And of course, these are fears that like from a sober mind, you're just like, okay, that's kind of funny. But like in that state, it's very, very real. And I felt like I was trapped. I felt like, oh, I've gone into a level of hell. And it felt like a purgatory energy that like, I'm not going to get out of. My friends can't reach me. And like, I had this story in my mind that if I tried to respond to that text message, like it wouldn't go through. And I wouldn't be able to connect with anybody who loves me. And I'm like falling off the face of the earth. So I go back outside, and I remember walking out the back door and going toward the fire, and they're all sitting around it. And this scene replayed on a loop multiple times. And I walked out, and like, they all kind of like are like hunched over and looking really like scrawny and, like just like almost like a golem kind of energy. Mm-hmm. And they all look up at me at once, and their eyes are all black. And they're kind of like, they have like a smile on their face, but it's not like a big smile. It's like a grin. Mm-hmm. And they're all kind of like swaying like this and just looking at me like,
we got you.
We got you. Yeah. And so I sit back down and I go, guys, I think I'm in hell. Mm. And they were like, what do you mean? And they're like, still, their faces were like smiling. And it's like that energy of like, yeah, you're here now with us. Mm. And I was just overcome with fear. And I'd never felt this kind of fear in my life. And that whole night was this experience of every single one of them are like these gatekeepers to a deeper level of hell. Mm. And they're my tormentors. And they're also talking to me and revealing to me all of the ways that I will never feel love again, never feel anything good again. And I couldn't feel anything good. I was cold, and it was summer. We were sitting around a fire. I was terrified, and like I couldn't feel the love of my partner. I couldn't feel any of their good intentions. And we kind of like, we're sitting in this circle, and they all have this appearance, all of them except for my partner. And she actually took on a form of like greater beauty, but it seemed deceptive. Mm-hmm. It was like a siren or like a dark energy that I felt of like, I've lured you into a path that now there's no going back from, and you're stuck here with us. And, I believed it so deeply inside of myself, like you couldn't convince me otherwise. And I felt like I was receiving telepathic communication while they were also talking to me. And it was like they would say something, but beneath their words, I could feel like the truth coming through, and truth, right? It was fear, which is not truth, but it was a, like, you're like, hey, you're fine. Like everything's good. And it's like, you're in hell. And I remember they were trying to pull me out of it. They were trying to help me lift up out of this like darkness. But what it felt like to me was they were all just like trying to convince me that it wasn't real, when in my system I knew it was. I like, without a shadow of a doubt. And they were handing me different items to try to lift me out of it. But what it felt like they were doing, like I had a flute with me, and he was like, here, play your flute. You'll love this. And like, as he's handing it to me, I'm hearing this message of like, when you play this, it's going to kill you. And you'll go to the next level of hell. And it's like, that's how you get out of this experience, is you got to play this. But it's not going to make it any better. And it's like, that's suicide. You know that you're going to die. So if you do this, it's suicide. And yeah, part of the belief system in the church, is that suicide is like something that leads you into a level of hell.
Yes.
Right. And so I would refuse it. Like, no. And I remember actually him offering the flute and me saying like, is that going to kill me? And I think he actually said the words, I guess if you believe it enough, it would, and that felt so dark to me. And I was just like, no, I'm not ready, and they would try to feed me, like serve me fruit and like, here, eat some of this. And I would be like, that's poisoned. I remember like my partner actually putting fruit in my mouth at one point, and I chewed a little bit and then I spit it out at her. And it's just like, that's how convinced I was that like I was no longer in the plane of reality that I knew. I had entered into a whole other level, and I was speaking about everything that I thought I had done wrong in life. And so this track that I was on was having me like come face to face with all of the darkness and the guilt and the shame that I still carried inside of myself. It took me back to the infidelity. It took me back to the guilt that I held over that, and to the pain. And I thought that like, maybe that was where I went astray and went off the path. And then I've been walking this path of darkness ever since, and disillusioned and thinking that I'm walking a path toward God. And it even introduced me to this concept of like, the plant medicines are the forbidden fruit. You have eaten of the forbidden fruit, and you have tried to find God within yourself, but you've actually been neglecting the source, and you've been leading other people astray. You've been leading them along this path as well and serving this to them. And they're on the path too, and they're on their way to hell, and they're going to be in this same realm eventually. But of course you'll be separate and you won't be able to see them. And it was just like weaving in all of these fears. I had like fears of like that I had been allured into a cult, and that I was under the influence of a cult, and I had like fallen away from truth. Every single type of like deep visceral fear, and so much of it came through this, upbringing in the church. And not to blame it, but there's like a fear mechanism of like a fear of hell that drives you toward Jesus, versus like, no, I'm going to align with love. It's actually like, no, I don't want to go to hell, so I'm choosing this. And that fear is planted in at such a young age. And it was so deep in my system. And I remember feeling like I had committed an unpardonable sin, like I had blasphemed in some way, and that there was no going back from it. I was unforgivable. And I was just on this loop all night long, trying to get out of it. And I don't know how much time passed.
Do you think that when people experience things on the medicine, they are only seeing or experiencing what already existed within them?
I feel that there's kind of like a transcendental like response to that. It's like, yes, to some extent I do, like, and I think we're connected with like each other as well. And there are collective fears that we pick up on and may not even be conscious to.
Yeah.
But there were definitely fears that I was encountering that night that were definitely lodged within me, in my own psyche. And I didn't consider myself someone who was wounded by the church. I didn't consider myself someone who was wounded by religion. I didn't have any bitterness toward religion. I was just like, I wasn't really finding God there anymore. Yeah. But I'd always aligned with Christ, and like the message of what Jesus came to give us is just like, love God, love your neighbor. Yeah. And that felt like my mission. But there were things in the way of that.
Yeah. I think there was one medicine journey I did. I don't remember how long it was. Obviously, you don't know time on your, but I just remember I was like, kind of like going like this for a long time on the couch, and I was like crying, and I was just saying like, me too, me too, me too. And I was feeling like the pain of a woman. And it wasn't anything from my own experience. It was like a collective field of just women who have, you know, been sexually abused, sexually assaulted. And I think the medicine, you're so sensitive when you're on the medicine, and there's really no separation from you and nature and the consciousness of all that is. And when people, I never really understood this, when people would say that like they're healing the collective, that would get a big eye roll for me. I'm like, okay, Joey. You're healing the collective, you're high on mushrooms, you know, and I would judge that. But when you bring intention to the container to heal, sometimes you are healing things that aren't necessarily yours, but because they're not part of yours, as in my story from when I was born in 1986 and incarnated, but it's mine as in like, I am a sister, I am a daughter of God, I am part of the whole. And I think a lot of what you are experiencing are things that are deeply, deeply woven into the fabric of the collective psyche and deep in your own unconscious growing up in the church.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I remember, like, I think it took me a while to get to this place, but like starting to tap into like, okay, wait, if I'm unforgivable, like what did Jesus come for? Like, and it was like still tapping into that like religious line of like, he came and forgave all sins. But it's like, okay, well, what did I do to be unpardonable? You know? And so it was just this like looking through that, like trying to look in every aspect of my life and how I went astray.
Yeah. But the deep things, like the deep threads that I think are in the collective psyche, I'd love to kind of go through that with you. Yeah. What I've heard so far is like in the collective psyche, we have a deep fear of cults. There are documentaries, there are movies, there are horrible stories about it. And when people start to gather, there's a red flag that goes up, honestly. You know, there's something about cults that I think we can talk about that feels like it was a part of your journey.
Very much.
It feels like there's a part of like, if I am bad, I will go to hell. And I just think about like growing up in the Catholic Church and wanting to be a good girl. We were talking about reconciliation, you know, earlier this morning. It's, you know, in first grade, you get your first reconciliation. You go and tell the priest your sins, you know, you're 6 years old. So talk about a separation from God strategy. Wow. You know, these feel like some of the things. And then like, it also sounds like you were feeling like guilt for all your past quote unquote sins.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how I've come to understand sin since this time.
Missing the mark.
It's just missing the mark.
Just missing the mark.
It's an archery term. That means like you just missed the bullseye. Like,
and not someone else's mark.
Right.
And not all-knowing God's mark. It's your highest self's mark. It's like, I want to be kind and loving. Oh, yeah. That's a little egoic.
Yeah.
You know, like that wasn't the kindest thing I could have said, you know?
Yeah. And I view like the highest self as like, that's the like direct connection through us, through the soul to source. And that's going to be an emanation of pure, unconditional love.
Yeah.
And so really when we miss the mark, when we quote unquote sin, it is missing the mark of pure love. Yeah. And what do you do as a parent when your child, like, you know, does something a little off? Do you like punish them eternally, or do you say like, no, here's how we want to move forward?
Yeah. Or you ask them because they know. It's like, Logan, what do you think you could have done there, babe? And she knows. It's like, perfect.
Yeah. And so it's wild to me. Like, one of the things that came out of this is like, how could, you know, we connect with, as like physical earthly parents, that like, you know, we have our struggles and our challenges and we do miss the mark. And like, how can we still have this level of unconditional love for our children and this all-knowing, omnipotent, omniscient, you know, unconditionally loving God be willing to throw a vast majority of his children into eternal fire or eternal cold?
Because we don't talk about God in that way. We talk about God as in outside of yourself, all knowing. And you are constantly seeking God's approval.
Yeah.
Well, when I die, will I go to heaven up there with you and my ancestors, or am I going down there? And you're constantly in fear. It is actually woven into Christianity. Like, you want a God-fearing man and a God-fearing woman.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like almost celebrated as in like, you are faithful and devoted, you know, if you're God-fearing.
Yeah.
I never want my daughter to be fearful of me.
Yeah. It's wild. Like, that's some of the scripture that like a lot of pastors will land on. And it's like, I actually went to support after like a hell experience to one of the pastors, and like, he brought this scripture forward. It's in Proverbs. It's like, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And like, I've always understood, you know, when they like, so often that's like clarified of like, fear means reverence, but the word that's used is fear. And when we hear the word fear, we think of something we're scared of. And I'm sorry, but like, love is not something you can be scared of. I align with the idea of God is love, and it is to be revered. That love is the highest quality of God, is what I feel like. And it's the capital L love. It's more than we can even fathom. And that is to be revered in every aspect of loving all the people around us, loving this earth, treating it well, loving the bodies that carry our souls, loving these temples. It is so vital. And that is something we are meant to revere, but not fear. And so there's this rhetoric within some of the teachings, I feel, that it's like, it like almost reinforces fear. It's like, well, you're supposed to have fears, you know? And I actually think that the journey toward love is meeting the fears that are within us and like in the field that we're connected to, and seeing the love that is beneath them, because the fears are like a veil around pockets of like greater love that can be accessed within us. And every time we meet a fear with courage head on, and we're willing to sit with it and look it in the eye and know that we are love at our core, that awareness illuminates that fear for what it is, and it shines the light on the love that's beneath it. And the fear is just pointing to greater love that's accessible to us. And I feel like this journey was actually meant to connect me deeper with divine love, but it took me into the depths of darkness that I didn't even know that I had within me.
Yeah. What do you think that fear of cults is? Where does it come from? Why do you think it was so loud for you?
It's really interesting. I don't remember a whole lot of that fear being like spoken about in the church. Nothing about cults really, but like, I do remember films, movies about that. And I don't know, it feels like one of those kind of indirect fears that is like, dude, you could potentially be deceived by a group that proclaims love, but has ill intent. And then you would be trapped and confined to this through either some kind of blackmail or some kind of cage or fear mechanism that keeps you locked in. And it's the loss of your own freedom. But I don't know where it arose in my own life. I don't actually have a pinpoint on what brought that forward. But obviously I'd been engaging with a community container and feeling so much like connection. But then one of the beautiful things about that experience was, dude, Fit for Service was all about like igniting the light within us and then like go out into the world and bring your light forward. It wasn't like coercing us to stay in the container. It wasn't coercing us to like, hey, give us more money. It's just like so much of it was donation based, you know, or they tried that at least. And yeah, it was just like, it's really interesting though, that came up in my hell experience as like, oh my gosh, like I'm following some kind of like dark path through this and being deceived.
Yeah. It's wild how when something feels good, we'll question it. Like I remember how I felt joining Fit for Service and just like all the love I was feeling from strangers and sort of the safety I was feeling and sort of this permission slip to be my most authentic self. And there was like this part of me that was like, what is this? You know, like, what is this? We're all sober. Like, there's just this much love and like community and, you know, like, dude, what's wrong with me? Like, I had to pay to be part of this container to feel love. Like, what is like, it was bringing up like a lot of different things for me. But if I went to that summit and I felt like people's egos or just, I wouldn't question it. It's just like, yeah, of course. But it's like, I questioned the love, which is like really interesting. And I think that's what was in some way weaving through your hell experience. It's like when there is love and it's kind of this unconventional way where people are dressed however they want. And it's not like going to church where everyone's dressed a certain way. And it's kind of like, dude, is this okay? Kind of feels like a free for all, you know? And it's like, there is a fear. And it's like, if there were like louder ego, less love, more conflict, it's almost like I wouldn't question it. It'd be like, oh yeah, humans gathering. We can do that sometimes, you know, but I was getting a taste of something I had never experienced. And so then it's like, ding, ding, ding. Like, what is this? You know? Yes,
absolutely. It's so unfamiliar, the high level of love. And it's actually really hard to describe because you can feel it in those like containers where there's like a lot of people showing up on that level of intention.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find that out in the normal world.
Well, it's like sports teams are its own version of a cult. We like wear the same outfit and we speak the same language. We have inside jokes, but we're trying to win. So there's like a mission we're on and we're trying to have victory. And when you go into this container, there's this like equality or like harmony that starts to emerge. And it's actually like you're running experiments around like, well, what does this look like if there is no winner? We all win. We're all cared for. Love is abundant. It's not like I'm getting the love, you're not. And that was different for my system as well, coming from athlete culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like that's a really good point. I think it's interesting to feel the density of the hell experience that like as I talk about it, I can still feel some of the density. So it means to me like, oh, there's something that's still moving up out of me with that. But I learned a lot from it. And I think that part of it was to trust love more, to align with truth. And when I set my intentions that night, you know, it was like divine love and divine choice. And I didn't even remember until I looked back at my journal before recording this, like, oh, I put divine choice in there too. And that's interesting because that journey it wasn't like I just snapped out of it. I started to realize that time was passing. I had thought that time was standing still because it looked like the moon was just hanging in the sky in the same spot for so long and it was bright. And then I started noticing over time, I was like, oh, it's moving. Okay, time's moving. That's good. There's time in this realm that I'm in. But the fear wasn't lifting. And I remember my partner was also like offering me some hape to ground. And I thought that that was one of the mechanisms that was also going to kill me. And as the night approached, like it was getting pretty late, the night approached the end, and she was like, okay, I'm going to sit with Hape. You can join me if you want to. And she's like, I'll serve you if you want me to. And I remember having the awareness to just like ask, like, if you serve me that, will it kill me? And she was like, no. I was like, you promise? And she was like, yes. I was like, good, because if you're telling me that, then it's not suicide.
Oh my
That
God.
was like the logical reasoning that I was like bringing into this.
I also feel like there's something about that's in the collective psyche of like, my desires are bad. Things that bring me joy are bad. It's really interesting in the hell realm that you visited. It's like, they're like, here, Chase, you love to play your flute. You're like, that will kill me. And it's like, here, Chase, you love fruit. It'll feel good. You're like, no. And I think about how the church has shamed sex. I feel like about just in our collective psyche of like, work is supposed to be hard and you do the job that you need to do to pay the bills. And like, God forbid your child wants to be an artist, you know? And this is like deep in the psyche. And so that's also this like interesting expression coming through you of like, everything is bad. Hape, bad. Flute, bad. Fruit, bad. So wild.
Yeah. And I think I had fallen into this belief too, that I had like chosen this life of vanity where I'm just going to sit in the backyard. And I remember in my journal, I wrote like, I put the medicine in quotes so many times because during that journey, they were almost mocking me that I was like calling it medicine. And it felt like, oh, you're just going to sit back here and do medicine and sit around a fire and eat fruit and think you're helping the world. And it was like this mockery of like, you think you've chosen love, but you're actually just indulging in pleasure. And it was like, okay, when I can zoom out and look at the life that I live, no, I do want to walk through the world and meet people with love and serve and help. But in that illusion, I was just feeling all this guilt and this like vanity energy coming through.
Do you think some people walk through the world in their sobriety? You know, today's Thursday, people woke up, went to work, and they're in some version of hell.
Absolutely. This is what I think one of the big nuggets that this journey taught me is like, hell is not just, and I say just because I don't know what's like actually after this life. You know, I have my ideas and my feelings, but it's not just a realm in the afterlife. It's something we experience here and now, and so many of us are actually living in a version of hell, and we don't even know it because we've accepted it as normal. And hell is like, it has as many layers to it as there are layers toward heaven. It's like, it's this, I don't view it as like these ultimate states of like, it's only hell at the lowest and it's only heaven at the highest. It's like, it's a spectrum between. And it's the spectrum of fear and love. So the more that we're aligning with fear, the more that we suffer, the more that we struggle, and the more that we align with love and we illuminate the fears within us and draw light onto those and transform them into love, the more we rise and we actually feel the beauty and the synchronicity and the divine plan unfolding, this divine interweaving that has both free will and destiny. You know, it's like, it's this intermix magical like mystery. And this spectrum is very wide, and we always have a choice.
We had some technical difficulties. It cut out when Chase was talking about the loops that we get into. And, you know, I just think a key element of this today, and for anyone watching, it's that in every moment we have a choice. And whether you're on a solo journey right now or you're in union, at every moment we get to choose love. And it's so easy when Chase triggers me to just say whatever I want, be mad, blame. But that's a victim frequency. And can we just choose love and claim that sovereignty, claim that freedom? I think if we do that, this world becomes a wildly different place. And I think we start to realize that this is heaven on earth. And yeah, I can walk through the remaining days of my life thinking this is hell. And if I turn on the news or I listen to some family members, I might believe it. You know, but if you choose love in every moment, you, instead of throwing your trash on the ground, you throw it in the trash can. Instead of walking by the homeless person, you acknowledge their existence. Instead of, you know, yelling or snapping at your partner, you're like, how can I understand you more? You know, every time we do that, the frequency of love expands, and we are all co-creating heaven on earth. And that's my choice.
Yes.
And I forget.
And I do too.
But I'm choosing to choose love. And my prayer is that every time I forget, that I quickly remember. And I'm grateful to have you because you always help me remember.
Yeah. We help each other remember. And when we show up as love and we're making that choice, we remind others. And it's a ripple effect. It's a wave that moves through the collective.
Yeah.
And love wins.
Yeah. Yeah. We love you guys. Thank you for being with us and journeying through this hellscape and also the technical challenges. It's been a ride, but we look forward to seeing you next week. Love, love, love.
Love, love, love.
Bye, guys.